I'd now like to introduce Joe Devine, retired president and CEO of Jefferson Health, New Jersey.
Hello, everyone. Jim, are they really talking about you? I've been in the basement, okay? If you remember when you go to the boardwalk and they have those paint by numbers in the circle program, I've seen Bob do that, which came out to some beautiful artwork. But let me say this up front. I've known Dr. George for over 30 years. So it's certainly an honor to be here tonight and to say a few words on his behalf. I know that he hates these events. Okay, he really does. Not that he doesn't want to support them, he just doesn't always like all the attention. Now for him, he does it because of the cause. And his commitment and dedication to causes are second to none, which we all know. I'm fortunate to have been part of the Jefferson system. I'm fortunate to have worked with Rich Webster. I'm fortunate to have known the people from McGee, including Jack Carroll. And they provide great care and do amazing things. It's one of those special places. And Dr. George is an example of that. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but honestly, Jim, this is a great honor for you tonight. But you know I won't hold any prisoners. I'll be as honest as I can be, and hopefully bring a little levity in it for you, which I know you like. So when he first called me and said, would you be interested in speaking on my behalf tonight? I'm going to be honored by McGee for the Humanitarian of the Year Award. I said, am I going to get paid? He says, well, you know me, I don't really put money out for anything. Right? He says, but please come and speak. So no, in all fairness, I said absolutely. And there's a quote that says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And Jim George is a great example of what people do for others. I first met Dr. George through a mutual friend who unfortunately passed away this year, Dr. Frank Levin, who was one of Dr. George's closest friends. Dr. Levin at the time was the chief of emergency medicine at Kennedy in South Jersey. We had not been Jefferson yet. And he said, Joe, I want you to come meet this guy. I'm going to join his company. Dr. Levin had a company called East Coast Physician Associates, and he was joining Emergency Physician Associates, trying to keep that straight, which was owned by Dr. George at the time, that eventually became Team Health. And he says, I want you to meet this guy, Jim George. He's really a good guy. So after I met Jim George, I turned around to Frank and said, are you sure this is the right guy you're introducing me to? But honestly, he had an impactful presence from the minute I met him. I knew that he was genuine, he was caring, he was someone who was well reserved and he was well spoken. And most importantly, you knew pretty early on you could trust him. And it was an interesting balancing act because physicians in this room and hospital executives in this room know that Jim just didn't provide services under his physicians at Kennedy. He provided to most of the other hospitals. And the good news is he told us everyone else's strategies throughout that time. All right, Jim, I twisted it a little bit. But he kept integrity for every single way that he did things. And that was the marquee of who he was. He also helped develop one of the greatest residency programs in South Jersey in emergency medicine. Now, you didn't turn out some good doctors, you turned out some great doctors. And some of them are here tonight. Some of them I remember when they were interns and they became residents, and then they worked at your program. So over 20 plus years, there have been hundreds and hundreds of residents who have graduated from the Kennedy, now Jefferson, New Jersey program that have inculcated hospitals throughout South Jersey. Matter of fact, one of the program directors at Inspira now is a former Kennedy resident. And they're great programs and there's a lot to be proud of. And honestly, it cost him money to do it. I know that it wasn't free. But at the same time, I knew it was going to be something that was going to be impactful because he was concerned about impacting the quality of lives of the people who received services, but also educating future physicians. And I thank him for that. You know, we call in South Jersey a few people, I used to say this about Dick Roth. There's a couple doctors who were physician dons. Now, growing up in South Philly, I can talk about what dons are, all right? But Jim was truly a don. He was someone who we respected, he was knowledgeable, he's someone you could speak to, and he was someone when he called you, you went to see him. I remember one such day, he called me back it was probably early 2000s. He called me to meet him on a Saturday at his home in Woodbury. And his home is kind of, it's on a main road, but the backyard is secluded. He says, come on, we're going to sit down in the backyard. I figured out, should I sit on my back to the door? I'm not really sure. It had to be 100 degrees out. He served me only lemonade. I knew Mary wasn't there because I got no food. And as you know also, he's not only a physician, but he's a lawyer. He grilled me for several hours about different things about me. He wanted to know about me, similar to what Amy talked about. Little did I know that day, he was actually screening more for a potential job at Emergency Physician Associates. Unfortunately, he didn't hire me. Everybody makes a mistake along the way. Right? Jim, you made a mistake. All right? But it all worked out. But honestly, from that day forward, I was fortunate enough to develop a friendship with someone who became not only my business associate, but a friend for many years. He also is known as the Great Whisperer. Okay? Jim George has it, even before he was in his current position, he always would come to a meeting and whisper this way to you. Now realize the entire room was filled with people. So people are saying, well, what is Jim George talking about Joe Devine? So people come to me, what did Dr. George want? I said, I have no idea. I didn't hear one word he said. So I had to call somebody at Team Health, ask them what he said, and tell me what was going on. I had no idea what he was going to do. But honestly, Jim is a true legend. In addition, we also know that he's a fashion icon. He's truly a fashion icon. He always dressed classy. I always attributed it to Mary, but I wasn't too sure. He was the first guy I ever knew who wore a blue tuxedo to a gala. Now you had to have a lot of confidence to wear a blue tuxedo to a gala, right? The next year he wore a tweed tuxedo to the gala. And I'm saying to my guy, this guy, he's not afraid of anything. He will show it all and put it all out there no matter what. But the reality of it was, have you seen him lately? Okay, some of his sneakers and socks he wears now, he's in his current position, and shirts, they're conversation pieces. I don't know where you buy them, Jim, but they're really pulling it off for you. So you remain the fashion icon no matter what happened. And you were certainly a special guy for it. He also said he was a great athlete. Now, Mary's laughing because we know that's not the truth. He would come to the golf tournaments with guys like Steve Murtaugh, come to the golf tournaments. He would never, his golf clubs looked remarkable. And not one of his golf balls were ever out of their cases. He had the nice shirt on, he looked the part, but honestly, he wasn't a golfer. He went there for the camaraderie and most importantly, to build on the benefit that he was there for. But I did learn over the years that really the athlete in the family was Mary. And then that passed down to her children, who all became great athletes. And over the years, he would call us to have meetings, and we would be at some kid's sporting event. You know, whether it be a softball game, a soccer game, a basketball game. You're in the middle of a basketball game at Haddonfield High School. You can't hear anything going on. But Jim's talking about business because one of the girls are playing. So he was certainly very proud of his children and all they did. I remember the day when it happened, the devastating call I got from Frank Levin. He said, Dr. George has had a tragic accident. I said, no way. Because none of us could believe that Jim George would be taken down by anything. That day, kind of the world stopped for his friends. I really say that. He went into Jefferson. They provided great care for him. A few weeks later, I get a call from Dr. Levin, and he says to me, I need a favor for Jim George. I said, well, what is it? He says, I need to get him into McGee Rehab. He says, do you know anyone there? Ironically, I've been sitting on the Adam Talafaro Foundation for almost its inception. So I knew the people at McGee, and I knew Mary Schmidt. And I called Mary. I said, Mary, I need a favor for a friend. She says, I'm going to put you in connection with Dr. Freed right away. That day, within a couple of days, they transferred him to McGee. And honestly, the great work that McGee has done to make Dr. George what he is today is remarkable. His artwork is throughout the institution. It's throughout many places on our table today. And Amy talked about being down the basement of Man Cave. Now we call it the George Cave to be officially correct. It's called the George Cage. And honestly, there's remarkable work being done down there. And it's kind of a mess most days. But there's a lot of good work done down there. And for a guy who's 6'3", it's a pretty tight space. But it works for Dr. George, and I know that. People think he's philanthropic. He's also frugal, by the way. I'll be honest with you. He benefits so many organizations when it comes to giving up himself and giving up his foundation and charity. But at the same time, he's sort of like the Ted Danson of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Remember that show? Where Larry David put his money in to invest in a building, put his name on it, and Ted Danson wanted to be anonymous. Well, honestly, Jim always wants to be anonymous. He's done dedication donations for people I know, and he didn't want people to know who it was. Now, part of it was he didn't want to give any more money to Virtua, and I could understand that. And Underwood at the time, and Spear, and John D'Angelo would say, no, if you're getting it, I need to have it too. But that's kind of why he did it. But you know, we're fortunate because since Jim's injury, some of us meet periodically. We would meet almost twice, 3 times a year in the Jim George cave. And Jim would send us a text, his famous text, and say, okay, we're going to get together for dinner. And we'd order from a certain restaurant in Woodbury. And we would all chip in and pay, except when the delivery driver came to pay, for some reason Jim's wheelchair no longer worked. Either me, Dr. DiMarino, or Dr. Bonner, somebody had to pay. But what he was the most proud of in his house in Woodbury is we would bring dessert. Beautiful desserts from Sweeties. I mean, top-notch dessert. And one day Dr. DiMarino says, you know what, I can't eat cake today. I want to eat something else. So Dr. George turns around and says, Jimmy, would you go in the freezer and get Dr. DiMarino one of those ice cream bars? So we're all sitting there thinking, this is going to be great. They're going to be Ghirardello bars, Nut bars, something high quality. He brings out the box. They're ice cream bars from Aldi. Now Jim was very proud because he got 6 bars for $3.19. And that has become a staple in his refrigerator. And I went in and checked the freezer, and there were tons of Aldi bars in there that lasted forever. So Jim, thank you for introducing us to Aldi, and Bob, thank you for taking him there. So, in all seriousness, I know this is a very serious night, and people spoke seriously about Dr. George. And he is certainly well-deserving of it. He's a remarkable person. Whether you've known him a short time, you've known him for 30 to 40 years, he's unbelievable. He's gentle, he's kind, and it's been a blessing for all of us to know him and to be part of this. The fact that he recovered and the impact that he made for his recovery and became part of our lives again and changed his life has not only been an inspiration, but it's been something that we all live as example to. He's someone who's really made a difference. And Jim, we thank you. He is somebody who, they say the things that humanitarian has 4 principles. Somebody who has humanity, they have neutrality, they have impartiality, and they're independent, which is a fundamental action that all people who are humanitarians have. And in addition, Thomas Paine once said, the real man smiles in troubles, he gathers strength from distress, and he grows brave by reflection. He had a lot of reflection to do, a lot of strength that he needed, and a lot of things that he did to make a difference. Dr. George, thank you. Thank you for being my friend, accepting me, although you didn't hire me 30-some years ago. But most importantly, thank you for all you do. God bless you. We love you. And you're the best. Thank you.